Welcome back to the Apache podcast. Just doing a little two-part series on the on Asmongold's take on the Ukrainian situation. This video's been is it's a little old. It's about a month ago, but I've been wanting to do it just because I like his view on some things. Um, and Yeah, let's get into it. So a little backstory. Um, the This is right after Zelensky and several European representatives like UK Keir Starmer's, France Emmanuel Macron, NATO Secretary, EU Secretary. The only person who wasn't invited with that I found interesting was the Polish side. But I don't know what the story was behind that, but let's get into it.
That invited them to come.
But the president told those European leaders last week that he wanted a ceasefire. The president went on television, said he would walk out of the meeting if Vladimir Putin didn't agree with one. He said there would be severe consequences if he didn't agree to one. He said he'd walk out in 2 minutes. He spent 3 hours talking to Vladimir Putin, and he did not get one. So there's
because
some mixed
obviously
messages.
things happened during that meeting. Well, because obviously things look.
Wow, what a surprise that this binary thing that Trump said isn't actually as simple as he said it was. Why is she arguing? Because, again, the media is your enemy. She's arguing with wasn't Marco Rubio there in the room? Like, he knows what it is. Yeah, it's her job, literally. Well, it's not really. She's not approaching this from any sort of a perspective of, oh, well, I'm just trying to understand this better. No, I don't think so at all. It's very obvious. Whenever she's prepositioning the European leaders that are coming to the White House to protect Zelensky from Trump bullying Zelensky into giving Ukraine to Russia, like, this is not journalism,
Yeah,
okay? It's
yeah.
propaganda. What are we doing?
This is yeah, he's absolutely right. This is just the news being the news. It's they're taking one piece of information from the media saying that if Trump doesn't get a ceasefire out of it, then he failed, at this negotiation table, and that's just the news, being or journalism doing or news being doing news things.
Here?
Our
You're
goal
making it complicated. She's arguing because she's a woman. Finally, somebody says it.
here is not to stage some production for the world to say, oh, how dramatic he walked out. Our goal here is to have a peace agreement to end
What
this
a
war,
surprise.
okay? And obviously we felt, and I agreed, that there was enough progress, not a lot of progress, but enough progress made in those talks to allow us to move to the next phase. If not, we wouldn't be having Zelensky flying all the way over here. We wouldn't be having all the Europeans coming all the way over here. Now, understand and take with a grain of salt, I'm not saying we're on the verge of a peace deal, but I am saying that we saw movement, enough movement to justify a follow-up meeting with Zelensky and the
Wow, what a logical, normal position that any reasonable person could have assumed came out of the meeting. Yeah, duh. Fucking obviously.
Europeans, enough movement for us to dedicate even more time to this. You talk about the sanctions. Look, at the end of the day, if peace is not going to be possible here, and this is just going to continue on as a war, people will continue to die by the thousands.
This is something that I'm, I guess, kind of conflicting with the narrative is, why hasn't President Trump imposed sanctions? That it, it does make you wonder after certain timelines or deadlines that's given by President Trump, either to come to negotiation table, whether that is get a ceasefire out of it, whatever the deadline is. um, when a sanctions was supposed to be in place, it never does follow. And I believe Marco's going to go into it, which once you start that path, you kind of, that's where this, the carrot versus the stick type of negotiation comes in, because once you start the stick, you can't really half-ass, the, I guess, the consequence. So you really want to, be firm and be strong with the carrot or with the stick. Uh, so I think so. Marco Rubio's going to go into um, on what that looks like.
The president
Yep.
has that option to then come in and impose new sanctions. But if he
True.
did this now, the moment the president puts those additional sanctions, that's the end of the talks.
Exactly.
You've basically locked in at least another year.
Yeah. So they don't want to do that, because if they do that, then you don't want to play that card, because after you've played the card, you can't use it as leverage anymore. So if you can use that card as leverage to get what you want, then it's better to do that than play it and then have to deal with the fallout. I mean, this is common. Anybody knows this. I mean, this isn't some art of the deal master fucking like wizard galactic brain five-dimensional chess. It's just like anybody that plays Magic the Gathering knows this.
Yeah, this isn't some Sun
You play
Tzu
Pokemon, you know this. Holy
philosophy
shit.
and
A year and a half of war and death and destruction.
I think the news really, this is going back to the same th going back to that, why didn't President Trump, after 3 hours meeting with Putin, get a ceasefire out of it? And the news, the the media, drives that nail, you know, through the wall on hammering this specific. Same thing with the sanctions. Why hasn't the sanctions been imposed after specific deadlines? And I agree with Asman here and Marco here. Once that card's been played, it's hard to change your mind or backtrack on it.
We may unfortunately wind up there, but we don't want to wind up there. We want to
That's
wind up
good.
with a peace deal that ends this war so Ukraine
That's
can go on
nice.
with the rest of their lives and rebuild their country and be assured that this is never going to happen again. That's the goal here. We're going to do everything
Yeah, of
possible.
course. I mean, that's obviously good. And okay, but what do you do when they actually follow through? Trump threatens everyone with tariffs and sanctions and follows through right away. He's now told Russia 3 times that they have a deadline. They missed it. So when does he actually do it? I don't know. I mean, the odds are like, and this is the same thing that happened with Iran. Like, what I think will probably happen will either be that they will come to a resolution or there will be an Iran situation. Now, what does that look like? Are we going to bomb Moscow? I think the chances of that are basically zero. It's not going to happen. But what I do think is going to happen is that we might empower Ukraine to do something that is, like offensive against Russia. I think
Absolutely,
that's
absolutely.
possible. And
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, also at the same time, you can't really compare, President Trump's resolution with Iran to the Kremlin. Just two different two regions, and two factions, two motives, uh, and I think that you can't, like Wasman said, there's, I mean, obviously that there's almost zero chance that we're gonna bomb, Kremlin or the Moscow city. But I think that with the prior Biden administration, we were hindering the Ukrainians on a lot of uh, certain things, such like giving them specific weapon, but not allowing them to fully use it or maximize their potential on the offensive side of things, specific, you know, armaments, specific equipments, intelligence sharing, and the like.
they have nukes. Yeah, sure, right. But I think that's possible that it could happen. and delaying Russia for decades. Yeah, or they could use those tariffs. But you're right. You're right. Obviously, and also the reason why is that Trump can negotiate more strongly with those other countries based off of those countries' position. So and this is like, again, this is not a comfortable reality, but it is a reality, is that Trump can bully around a small country like,
Right.
I don't know,
Like,
Pakistan,
yeah.
but he can't bully around a big country like Russia. Like, Russia is a much larger country. They have a
And I think that this says a lot of things, because if you look at the news, not the news, but if you look at certain achievements that President Trump has done over just over the first 6 months of his presidency, he's done an amazing job. It's ending 7 regional conflicts worldwide. However, they do pay, even though some wars have lasted, for decades, like like Congo and Rwanda. Uh, I think that, just the sheer, uh, I, I guess just the sheer number of conflict he has ended, it speaks volume. But at the same time, those regional conflicts pale in comparison to the monumental size and I don't know if I should say economic powerhouse, but definitely a military powerhouse like Russia. Um, Even if those other the conflicts he has ended did have million plus deaths on the table, and one big one was uh, um, India and Pakistan. Obviously, those were very limited casualties, but they could have it could have been ex you know it could have raised to a nuclear escalation. So luckily, President Trump stepped in and used the American uh, trade power essentially to bring both of them to back to the negotiation table. So
much more involved military, etc., or even Iran. He can bully Iran around all he wants. But
absolutely.
again, if it's a big enough country, it's harder to do. That's why it's harder for him to do that with China and with
Hmm.
Russia.
Hmm.
They have nukes? Yeah, exactly.
To make that happen if it's doable. It will require
Hmm.
both sides to make concessions. It will require both sides to get things they're asking for. That's how these deals are made, whether we like it or not.
Mm-hmm. He's totally right. He is. And it looks like, yeah, I'm glad that he's calling this out. I mean, this is a great thing. So, and this is even Zelensky's even talking about it. It looks like things are changing. You've got it right here. He's meeting with all the different people. And, oh, here we go.
Vladimir Putin made. Can you
Oh, I
name
was going to watch this.
can you name any concessions that Vladimir Putin made during this meeting? Has
This is an interesting take. I want to offer my take on this before Asman. Um, I This is a very sensitive, because a lot of people do essentially think that Ukrainian is giving up so much and they were on the defensive, and on the were the victim in this situation, in this war. But I would say that in the perfect world you would say you know the Russians would give give up some of their land in exchange for Ukrainian land, or in good faith equal value of concessions. And you're gonna see later is I don't know if Marco mentions this, but one of the primary thing that I guess is is that the Ukrainians will still exist, is one of the one of the narratives that the Russians are I guess using it as concession, as in yeah, we give up the ambition to take all of Ukraine. It is kind of the the um, the concession that they want to make. So
Why the fuck would why the fuck would he say this publicly? Are you kidding me? Oh my god, this is nuts. Just reveal the plans. Just tell us what's going to happen.
Have any
I wouldn't name him on the
concessions?
program.
Have any
I
concessions
wouldn't name
been
him on
asked?
your program. Why would I do that?
Where is the
Oh,
pressure?
of course, because you can't have a peace agreement. No, you can't have a peace agreement unless both sides give and get. You can't have a peace agreement unless both sides make concessions. That's a fact.
And
That's
it takes
true
two
in
to
virtually
tango.
any negotiation. If not, it's just called surrender, and neither side is going to surrender.
True.
So both sides are going to have to make concessions. So of course concessions were asked. But what utility would there be?
And I want to go back. The reason why I say the Russians are willing to make that type of quote unquote concession, that we're not going to take all of Ukraine, or we will lose the ambition to take all of Ukraine as a part of the concession, is because if you look at the current state of the war, yes, it's at a stalemate. Both sides aren't really moving an inch. It took the last 18 months that they've taken less than 500 square kilometers. So that's speaking volume to the Ukrainian defensive side, but that's also stating the fact that the Russians are still on the offensive, and they are still they're still gaining inch grounds. However long it takes, however many bodies it would take, that the Russians are willing to throw at it.
Of me going on a program and tell you we wagged our finger at Putin and told him you must do this and you must do that, it's only going to make it harder and less likely that they're going to agree to these.
Exactly. And now I think this reveals what the media's true intent is. The media is an agitator. The media's goal
Absolutely.
is to agitate tensions and to create problems in the world in order for them to report on it. So basically, they plant the seeds of discontent, of like dishonesty or whatever. They want to ruin it for Trump. Exactly. Because think about the content that they're going to get if this peace deal breaks down and then the war continues. Now you've got more people watching the news. So this is what I said before about how all these news companies are profit first, news second. So it is in their best interest for wars to continue. Don't ever let a news company tell you that they don't love mass shootings, or that they don't love terrorist attacks, or they don't love wars. There is nobody that benefits more from wars, terrorist attacks, and mass shootings than media companies do. That's it.
Absolutely. And that's their job.
Things. So these negotiations, as much as everyone would love it to be a live pay-per-view event, these discussions only work best when they are conducted privately.
Closed
This
table,
is why they
closed
crashed
desk.
out on Zelensky. It's because he tried to do it publicly.
Serious negotiations.
I don't know if that was the reason why they crashed out on Zelensky. Anyways, I don't know what that means.
In which people who have to go back and respond to constituencies.
Same with natural disasters, true.
Even totalitarian governments have constituencies they have to respond to.
Somebody says YouTube creators benefit a lot from it, probably more. You're right. And as a creator myself, it's like if there was a mass shooting or a nuclear bomb went off, it would make my viewership go up and I would make more money. That's true. This is a reality. And yeah, anything bad that happens, like if you think about like when was the last time somebody's viewership went up a lot? Well, probably the last time they got, something crazy happened.
People have to go back and defend these agreements that they make. And so and figure out a way to explain them to people. So we need to create space for concessions to be made. But of course concessions were asked.
Yeah, obviously, fucking duh. Like 100% that's what happens. That's the one I'm going to watch.
If at some point it becomes clear that both sides are so far apart and so dug in that we're just not near a peace deal, then the president will have a decision to make about how much more time do we invest in it and what actions does he take then. But I want everyone to understand, if this morning the president woke up and said, I'm putting these terrible, strong sanctions on Russia, that's fine. It may make people feel good for a couple hours, but here's what you're basically saying. You're saying talks are over. for the foreseeable future, for the next year or year and a half, there's no more talks because there's no one else in the world that can talk to him. Okay, Putin's not going to meet with Macron. He's not going to meet with the UK. With all due respect to these leaders, none of these leaders are going to be able to bring him to the table and talk to them. There's only one leader in the world that has any chance of bringing these two sides together. If there is a chance, there's only one leader in the world that can do it, and that's President Trump. And you forfeit that role the minute you put additional sanctions on him. We may get to that point, unfortunately, but if we do, it means that peace talks are no longer possible, and that would be very unfortunate.
Yeah,
because the real world ramifications are that while we're here calling each other names and doing TV interviews about this stuff and all of that in American politics, there are people who today will be injured and killed in the battlefield and in cities.
I'm gonna be real. I've actually been really impressed by Marco Rubio.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't know he had it in him. But, like, this dude is a guy that you want in your corner. Like, yeah, bro, like, little Marco's come a long way. He's amazing. Yeah, I think he's great.
In Ukraine, on the front lines, and even in Russia. Even as we speak, people that have nothing to do with this war are suffering as a result of it. And I think we are very fortunate and blessed and should be thankful to have a president that has made peace and the achievement of peace a priority of his administration. We've seen it in Cambodia and Thailand. We've seen it in India, Pakistan. We've seen it in Rwanda and the DRC. And we're going to continue to pursue any opportunities we can find to bring about peace in the world.
I forgot all about the Cambodia, Thailand thing. I did. And it was them trying to if I remember right, it was them trying to, like, fucking retake some temple for Shiva or some fucking shit like that. I think that was it. And there was a big issue over this. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. That was a weekend. Yeah, I totally forgot about that little situation, right? And Ukraine's constitution, what is this here? Ukraine's constitution.
Successful in Donetsk region. Putin has been
this is English. Let's listen to what he said.
Russia is still unsuccessful in Donetsk region. Putin has been unable to take it for 12 years.
Damn.
And the constitution of Ukraine.
I guess this is from Crimea.
It's impossible to give up territory or trade land.
Mm-hmm.
Since the territorial issue is so important, it should be discussed only by the leaders of Ukraine and Russia at the trilateral Ukraine, United States, Russia. So far, Russia gives no sign that trilateral will happen. And if Russia refuses, then new sanctions must follow.
Yeah, Ukraine's constitution forbids giving up land. Zelensky says any territorial talks must involve Russia, Ukraine, and the U.S. together. No back-channel deals, no handover. If Putin refuses, Zelensky wants the West to tighten the screws. More sanctions, more isolation. Yeah.
I want to speak on this. I think that the fact that, Zelensky said Ukraine's constitution forbids, well, I understand that he's the president and he needs approval to, I guess, to change the constitution, making an, addendum or something inside. I understand that, if he suggests this or if he does push for a constitution, addendum, I think that I for sure know that he would tank his rating, not that he cares, and he pretty much will be his presidency will be done for Ukraine. But I disagree with him that he can't, he doesn't have any power over it. So
in my opinion, I think that they're going to have to give up land.
Mm-hmm.
Zelensky firmly rejected handing over any Ukrainian territory, saying it's impossible under the Constitution. I really hate to say this, but I don't think that Putin or Trump give a fuck about the Ukrainian Constitution.
True.
They don't. And again, like, invaders hate him. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, he doesn't have... I don't think they really have the cards for this either. I mean, I'll have to disagree. Yeah. Oh, do you really? You think Putin cares about the Ukraine Constitution? Like, what are we talking about? Putin doesn't even care about Ukraine. You think he cares about the Constitution? Yeah, it's crazy. And so, no, he changed the constitution 4 times since 2014. Well, I don't know. Ukraine doesn't give a fuck about Ukrainian constitution. Well, I don't know about that. I have no idea. But Zelensky will not fly to Trump alone. And then, yeah, there's a bunch of other people that are coming. I mean, this really isn't that big of a surprise. And yeah, this is pretty much the way things are going. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but in my opinion, I think the outcome for this is what my opinion is. The outcome is that Ukraine will end up giving up territory.
Oh,
I think this
100%,
is where things are going
100%.
to go. I could be wrong. I hope that I'm wrong. I don't think that should happen, but I think that will be the outcome. The media plays up the fact Trump sends for Putin. Is that perhaps not fine negotiation? I think that's just the media trying to do media things. I don't think there's really anything that you can base that off of. You can't really go and be like, oh, wow, I can't believe this. They're just saying whatever the fuck they want. Do you think Ukraine should give up land? Should is a nice idea, and it can be discussed all over Reddit. But when you have cities being destroyed, people being killed, and billions of dollars being poured into a war that effectively is just killing people, shoulds go away. Do you want my opinion? Should Ukraine give the land away? No. I think Russia's totally in the wrong. They're completely in the wrong.
I think that um, the fact that Asman is saying that the Russians are wrong is speaking a lot of volume. Um, you know, with the the audience that he has and the following that he has, you know, just outright to say that, I think that it's, you know, it's it's very much appreciated from the Ukrainian side. Um, Very bold. But I think that, you know, and even some of the political officials uh, won't even dare to, you know, I guess won't even dare to pick a side in that regards.
But that doesn't matter. They can be wrong as much as they want, but if they have the power to enforce it, then
which
they're right.
which they
Joining
do
me
have
now
power.
is Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio. Secretary Rubio, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Sadly, might makes right.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. So heading into the meeting with
You can see how happy he is. He's so happy. Oh, good.
President Putin on Friday, President Trump said he wanted a ceasefire agreement. Now he is saying he wants a broader peace deal. We know that Ukraine, we know that European allies want a ceasefire first. Is a ceasefire now off the table, Mr. Secretary?
No, he's not going to say it's off the table.
No, it's not off the table.
What a surprise. I can never imagine that. What a shock that he's not going to make a definitive statement when negotiations are already, like, duh. Like, fucking obviously.
I think what the president said, in fact, you just read it on the air a few moments ago.
Neville Chamberlain had a peace agreement as well. You're right. You're absolutely right. But that has nothing to do with it. Like, I mean, again, like my opinion on this, I've said it yesterday, I'll say it again. I don't want to go over it 50 times. My opinion is that this decision should be made by the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian people. If they choose to keep fighting, I, as an American, would support having my tax dollars go towards helping Ukraine defend itself against Russia. I think that it's unfair, and I would be okay spending my money to help defend Ukraine against what I consider to be an invading, oppressive, imperialistic force, which is Russia. But
Yeah, pretty much what Asman said. It's essentially a in the beginning of the war, you know, most people have this type of narrative and this thought that, you know, the Ukrainians are the victim and Russians are the aggressor. But again, you know, they have the power to do so, which, you know, right, you know, they are right again, even if they are the aggressor. And now, you know, 3, 4 years later, the the narrative is slowly shifting, and I'm still very surprised that Asman is willing to put his value and I guess just um, his input behind the Ukrainian side as the victim, and the Russians as the aggressor. So,
But if the Ukrainian people have had too many deaths, too much pain, too much suffering, and they would rather just give up the land and move on, I think that it is absolutely preposterous for anyone, especially in the
this is a little bit different because the one of the if you look at the agreements between the drafted agreements between the Russians and the Ukrainians and the US side of things, it's not so simple as in if the Ukrainians are tired of dying, they should just give up the land and let the Russians take it. That's not essential, that's not really, that's not enough to the Russians. There's definitely more. I know there's more to it, such as uh, Western aid, full withdrawal of Western aid, um, including limited Ukrainian military, and much, and others. But yeah, giving up the land is a small piece of the demand from the Kremlin side.
United States that has no skin in the game. You have no consequence of your actions whenever you're saying this, to tell them that they should continue dying to fight Russia. It should be their support, one way or another. Why are we funding another country's war? Because it is geographically beneficial for the United States to limit Russia expanding its territory and continuing to invade Western forces in Western countries. And the concern is that after Russia already did this once with Crimea, what happens when you have 2 points?
Well, not just once with Crimea, actually, several occasions, with Georgia, with Transnistria of Moldova. This isn't a, Ukraine isn't special by any means, as in, the Russians want, specifically Ukraine. It's that they will land grab whatever they can, and the closest to them. So.
On a graph, you make a line. So now it's happened twice. That's the problem. Really? Like, I mean, that's it. Why don't you believe Putin wants to stop the war in Ukraine, that he cares for people in Ukraine? I think that Putin does want to stop the war. I think that he privately does. I think the war I think it's negative. I think it made Russia look weak, if you want me to be honest. I think that a lot of people going into the war in Ukraine expected Russia to roll over Ukraine in 3 days.
I think I can speak on this a little bit more, as someone who's been in the trenches. I definitely would say, on paper, the Russians look very mighty, and powerful, but I would, I would tell the audience otherwise, and more so of paper tiger than anything. The only, I mean, even looking at it now, just because the that Ukrainians are using Western aid, should limited, I should say, limited Western aid, should, with the I guess what the Russians have been preparing, since, I don't know, the last 30, 40, 50 years, um, 30 years, I should say, for the, especially the after the dissolution of Soviet Union, they've been preparing for some sort of reunification of Soviets republics. I don't know if republic is a good word in this, but with all of their technological advancements, you know, that they're definitely a lot more paper tiger than you know than the real deal on the battlefield. So in you know 3 days, I think that there was a lot of logistics that went wrong. Um, but I also know that the Ukrainians were watching closely on the previous neighboring country and you know and the Soviet tactics because obviously Ukraine was part of the you know part of the Soviet Union, but the Ukrainians understood and know what the tactics that the Russians deploy to you know to take over the central capital city and kind of spread out from there and the Ukrainians pretty much read you know read the attack like a book. I believe Georgia, I believe it happened in Georgia, the same low-flying helicopters, the surrounding of the capital city, the tank convoy shortly after. I think all of that was pretty much laid out, and then the Ukrainians were able to read that and you know kind of redirect assets and military to you know confront those.
That didn't happen. And obviously, it didn't happen because American and European interests prevented it from happening. But even with all of that, I think that it's phenomenal and inspiring, even the fact that the Ukrainian people have fought back so bravely against the Russians. I think they have. It's tremendous. And I think it surprised me. It surprised a lot of people. How many of you guys did that? Yeah. How many of you guys expected Russia to just roll them over?
Everybody,
I certainly
did. Everybody did.
Especially when I saw like those jets rolling over, just bombing everything. Exactly. Yeah. I thought they were going to get steamrolled. And so, like, again, I think the decision should be in the hands of the Ukrainian people. That's my viewpoint. That's what I think.
I agree. Agreed.
Personally, I think they should not give up any land. I think that giving up land is losing. And it's also creating a reward structure for Putin to do it again. But I think that decision is not my decision to make.
I think it's not only a difficult, you know, and again, I wholeheartedly, you know, appreciate Asmongold's take on this, and I 100% agree with them. But at the same time, Ukrainians are also not at a place to demand certain things like not giving up land. Um, you know, it's almost you know silly to even you know to even mention that that land is not a non-negotiable type of thing. So
Agreed to by all that the best way to end this conflict is through a full peace deal. There's no doubt about that. I mean, who would be against the fact if tomorrow we came to you and said we have a full peace deal and it's done? I think that's the best way to end the war. Now, whether there needs to be a ceasefire on the way there, well, we've advocated for that. Unfortunately, the Russians, as of now, have not agreed to that.
What a surprise.
But the ideal here, what we're aiming for here is not a ceasefire. What we ultimately are aiming for is an end to this war.
Well, I want to drill down on that exactly and what happened because as you just heard before the meeting with President Putin, President Trump warned there would be...
I think it will also make Trump look really good if this war gets ended under his watch. I mean, if Trump is able to end this war without Ukraine giving up territory, I think that the amount of capital that people will have to criticize Trump with will go down tremendously. I do. I think that it will actually be like a massive thing for him. Yeah, it won't happen. I don't think it's going to happen either, but I'm saying like theoretically.
Quote, very severe consequences for Russia if it didn't stop the war. Here's a little bit more of what he said on the plane ride over. Take a look.
I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today.
So what exactly changed? Is it that Putin would not agree to a ceasefire?
Well, first of all, the Russians are already facing very severe consequences. There's not a single sanction that's been lifted, and not one. I mean, they're facing all the same sanctions that have been in place today. All the American support continues for Ukraine, And ultimately, look, if we're not going to be able to reach an agreement here,
after it starts in 2 or 3 years, Trump will be seen as a new Chamberlain. I don't think he will, because Trump won't be in office and people will. I don't think that's what's going to happen. Like, because again, like that, the reason why that happened is because I think, Neville Chamberlain was still in power when Hitler continued to invade. But he will, maybe, right? I mean, I don't know if he runs again. I don't think Trump's going to run again. I don't think so. I think that there's like a 20% chance Trump runs again, but it's not a probability. It's not a likely probability.
Point, then there are going to be consequences. Not only the consequences of the war continuing, but the
it's funny how he. I'll leave it at this until next time. It's a good thing. I think that there would need to be a certain thing done for the Constitution for President Trump to run for a third term. But I think that even as of right now, if President Trump runs for a third term in 2028, I think his competition is very, very, very low. I mean, who do we have? Maybe Ron DeSantis out of Florida, Nikki Haley, Gavin Newsom, not gonna happen. Mike Pence, not gonna happen. Vivek, maybe. I doubt it. Not saying those are strong candidates. It's just looking back at the last 6 months of President Trump's presidency and his achievements, they every one of the candidates that I mentioned, pales in comparison to what President Trump has done. Even all the economic promises and reforms, because President Trump has been doing what he's telling and leading up to his presidency. I mean, and I think that if he does run for 2028, I think you would have, if I was to put a percentage on it, I'd say probably a solid 75%. However, if President Trump was able to fix the Ukrainian-Russian war, I think that number jumps up to 85%, conservatively. I think that's, one of the biggest issue, include, foreign policy, immigration. They're they're different, but they're still they're still somehow connected. But if President Trump is able, and he has been doing a tremendous job on the immigration, but if he's able to solve this war, in addition to the other 7 regional conflict, I think that the the candidates will almost stand no chance to President Trump's just his resume of even within the first year of his presidency, and and everything that he has been done. So I'm gonna leave it at the 24 minute mark for the first half, and then I'll make the second half tomorrow or something. So thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, all that YouTube nonsense. So see you next time.
consequences of all those sanctions continuing and potentially new sanctions.